Long-term projects are at the center of all this photographer creates. Topics he's covered through these projects range from a focus on a variety of locations throughout New York City, the life experiences of twins, observing artists and their work, and engaging with the history, culture, and people of different countries including Italy, India, and Mexico. His dedication to the craft of photography is clear through the 8 photo books he's created, one of which took 50 years to complete. Usually my subjects choose me. I keep going to the same places to photograph. Sometimes I get enough good images initially to make me want to return. Before I know it, I have 10-20 photos that I like on a specific theme. This spurs me to keep returning. I get to know the area, the flow, and the moods and the geography of the place. Before I know it, and almost as if by magic, I'm involved with the subject and want to do a book about it. Sometimes I know right away what I want to shoot and how to pursue it. Other times, it can take several years of shooting before I know what my subject really is. This is Street Smarts Volume 37, Harvey Stein. This video is brought to you by Dehancer Film Emulation. What drew me to study Harvey Stein initially was his dedication to long-term projects. His commitment to following through on projects is something many photographers could benefit from, especially with today's focus on consistently posting content that die daily deaths. In his own words, reflecting on this, Stein said, "I want to say something through my work. I think the best way to do this is through long-term projects, shot over time, that gives us a deeper understanding of the subject. I love single images, and they should also be strong, but I think more meaning comes from in-depth studies of a subject, not one or a few photos of a subject. And I always want my images to be a reflection of how I think, behave, and believe." Beyond his long-term projects, Stein has seemingly dedicated his entire life to photography. He currently teaches at the International Center of Photography, regularly gives lectures on photography throughout the United States and in numerous other countries, and was previously the director of photography at Umbrella Arts Gallery in the East Village. His commitment is also reflected in the number of exhibitions he's participated in across the US and Europe, including 86 solo exhibitions and 165 group ones. New York City is the central theme in a lot of Harvey Stein's work, and he's created 3 books that each focus on a different part of the city. Briefly Seen New York City Street Life captures the intense emotion experienced by New Yorkers as they move through the city's crowded and chaotic streets, using various modes of transportation. The photos in this book were taken over 4 decades, from 1974 to 2014. While Stein walked the streets of Manhattan, he stated, "These photographs are my response to the rough, raw, charged, and even magical energy of New York City street life. I'm attracted to the nuances of behavior and body language in public spaces, characteristic of the walker in the city." To convey the feelings that attracted him to the streets of New York City, he used blur, motion, grain, low-angle flash, skewed perspectives, tight cropping, overlapping images, and wide-angle views. In addition to using different techniques with his camera that don't always appear in all of his work, he also set aside what is often most present, the idea of being known by his subjects through confrontation and conversation. In this case, he used a more traditional candid street approach, which is something he has conflicted feelings about, stating, "I always felt candid shooting was maybe sneaky or underhanded, a negative connotation. You're not giving people a chance to say no. I don't know how fair it is." He continued his thoughts in another statement that, "The way I work, I'm trying to be friendly on the street. I don't take necessarily friendly photographs, but I'm friendly on the street, non-threatening, and I think that helps." Another example of the incredibly long-term projects of Harvey Stein is his book titled Coney Island People, 50 Years, which includes photographs from Coney Island taken between 1970 and 2020. I adopt the role of photographer as sociologist, documenting human patterns and behavior at play. Idyllic in its imagery, the photographs frame the men, women, and children who take part in this fantasy land, while simultaneously creating a portal for viewers to enter into the mood and feel of Coney Island. Over 1,000 trips were made by Stein to the location that he first experienced at the age of 14. This work was shot on a Leica and 21mm lens, which results in a slightly warped reality that conveys the feelings one might have while venturing through Coney Island. Stein sums up that feeling stating, "Coney Island is an American icon celebrated worldwide, a fantasy land of the past, with an irrepressible optimism about its future. There isn't anywhere else like it." He claims it's all about the people you come across while experiencing this fantasy land. It's a melding pot of all sizes, shapes, races, ages, religions, behaviors, and occupations. The amusements, the sea, and the open air all impart a kind of freedom of behavior I don't see anywhere else. The happiness is palatable, but that happiness ebbs and flows. Stein believes that Coney Island is almost always a reflection of what is more broadly happening in the entirety of New York City. And that idea can be seen more extensively in how the location has significantly changed over the years. When New York City is doing well, Coney Island is doing well. When New York City is going through a crisis, so too is Coney. When I began going, it was seedy, funky, and sometimes dangerous, especially at night. It is now more family-friendly than in the past. Many of the characters of Coney Island are no longer there, but it remains a fascinating place to spend the day. This video is brought to you by Dehancer Film Emulation, a plugin to help photographers and videographers achieve the look of film through digital means within the following software. For more information on how Dehancer can help you achieve the look of film on your frames by adding authentic and tested looks, compression, grain, halation, bloom, and more, check the link in the description. It took 23 years to put together Stein's book titled Harlem Street Portraits. To create these images, he went against the often sought-after candid shots of street photography and chose to engage with subjects that he wanted to photograph. Stein wanted to have a deeper engagement and conversations with these people that he summed up by saying, "Each portrait comes more than a depiction of a person. It becomes an intimate record of a personal encounter. For me, and hopefully for the subject, the experience is rich and memorable." In terms of creating this project, he stated, "My intention is to show a sense of community and my admiration and fondness for the neighborhood, and to document the humanity and spirit of the people, while confirming Harlem's basic nature, a vibrant, important, and essential world-famous area that faces a radically changing future." His interest in creating this project came from a draw to photograph challenging locations that stood out as being different from where he lives, and would be places that he would want to return to over and over again, much like he did with the other books he created focusing on New York. To spark interactions with the people he wanted to photograph for the project, he said he does so by trying to remain friendly, show humility, and have a positive attitude. "I look for something I like about an individual. An arm full of tattoos, an interesting shirt, to discuss. I try to break the ice with a friendly remark. It doesn't always work, but if the approach is right and the moment is good, I'm usually successful at getting the okay to photograph that person. Really, when you think about it, it's not a big deal. It's only a photograph." Throughout the process of making this book, Stein has also reflected on how he felt about making the portraits in Harlem, since it has a reputation as being one of the most dangerous places in the United States. On this, he said, "I've never felt uncomfortable shooting in Harlem. People have been friendly and open with their greetings, conversations, and emotions. It's a joy to be on the streets there. Things have changed in the neighborhood, crime is down, and the streets are cleaner, and better businesses are moving into the area. Certainly, Harlem has crime, but where isn't there crime?" Another of the long-term projects created by Stein was crafted over the course of 10 years throughout his time traveling and living in Italy. The project is called Movimento, and with it, he wanted to reveal psychological states with meaning, and to explore the intertwined elements of happy and sad moments, the familiar and the unexpected. "I give evidence to life that is never true, but always real, that often appears absurd, even surreal. I sense unfulfilled dreams and desires." That surreal feeling is something he felt even more in India. Stein has traveled to over 40 countries and believes there's no other place on the planet like it. "Given that I've spent much of my photographic career meeting and photographing strangers on the street, India is an amazing and important place to work. So, not surprisingly, the images here are mostly portraits, close up with some environment. While he has only been able to visit India twice, he seems to believe it is an endlessly appealing place to experience and photograph. Mexico, Between Life and Death, is a culmination of 14 trips Stein made to Mexico from 1993 to 2010. Highlighting the time he spent in the country, Stein has said, "I go as a wanderer, photographing in a country often strange to me. I hear words I can't comprehend, see things I don't understand, view acts of kindness and violence, smell new odors, and taste new foods. I walk down small streets that are unknown to me. I react and photograph intuitively. When in Mexico, I'm dizzy with new experiences, and free to go anywhere and do anything. The feeling is of endless possibilities. I'm restrained only by my own limitations." The project is his presentation of an attempt to understand life, death, and the culture that happens between the bookends of existence had in Mexico, through images he created in small towns and villages, primarily while festivals were taking place. The images show fragments of what Mexico is, a country of incredible contrast and contradictions. Mexico is all about piercing light and deep shadows, of stillness and quick explosiveness, of massive tradition and creeping progress, of religious belief, but with corruption as a way of life. It is a land of pulsating life, a country next to ours, yet so far away. A country with more than 50% of its population under 20 years old, but where old age is revered. Many of the photographs explore the Mexicans' robust attachment to life, into an acquiescent acceptance of the presence of death. Stein has also committed some time to experimenting with different cameras, to create some projects that maybe don't carry the same weight as the other work he's created, but are interesting to examine nonetheless. New Orleans Mardi Gras Festival, that took place in 1979, is one of these projects. It was shot using an SX70 Polaroid camera. Stein said, "The process allowed me to directly interact with my subjects who perform, observe, and even share in the photographic process. The 47 portraits are made just feet away from each person, mostly at dusk, sharply revealed by the light of the camera's flash." His hope was to use the quick action and processing of the camera in a way that reflected the frantic action of the subjects that were in colorful costumes and colorful settings. Stein has also experimented with Holga cameras. He used it when flying to continue with the through line of shooting every day in every situation. Many of those situations being out of the window of whichever form of transit he found himself in. With the Holga camera and its soft focus, vignetting, and square format, I believe I can achieve a rather unique take on flight. I'm concerned with composition, a certain graphic quality, unusual perspectives, and the evocation of freedom, wonder, and even a touch of fear that flight provides. All the same imperfections of the Holga he took into the project on flight were also taken into the project on trees. But in this case, Stein says he wanted to use these elements to convey a dreamlike quality to draw attention to trees, which he believes are not often given the reverence that they might deserve. I have always been fascinated with the variety and expressiveness of trees, and inspired by their patience and steadfastness, often in the face of cruel nature and hostile man. They are definitely a different species, benign, and worthy of our study and admiration. Even though trees are everywhere, we usually take them for granted and don't much acknowledge their presence. I have always photographed them, and I never felt successful until I began using toy cameras. Additionally, Stein used pinhole cameras to create images of bodies of water. Small movements and continuous change are often integral aspects of my pinhole photographs. The paradox is to evoke the feeling of movement in a still image. Sometimes only the icy-looking blur of the water appears. Sometimes there is an emptiness. Sometimes the water is secondary, hidden. These images are not meant to document, but rather to evoke, transform, and heighten emotional responses to the subject. Stein has a number of other projects that he developed on a smaller scale, and looking at these projects reveal more deeply what goes into the mentality of building up projects from nothing to something over different spans of time. Parallels is a project that observes twins. He says he started this project after coincidentally running into 3 sets of twins while shooting street photos back in the 1970s. I became fascinated with the visual impact of their duplication, which aroused an extreme curiosity about their relationship. Intermittently, over the next 6 years, I interviewed and photographed more than 150 sets of twins, most of them identical, and most of them people like the rest of us, aside from the accident of their twin birth. I began to realize that, regardless of how alike twins appear to be, the camera freezes their reality and allows us to see the differences between them. Although he hadn't photographed any tragic events before, Stein was drawn to photograph the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, which hit the east coast of the US in 2012. What drew him to this event specifically was his interactions with the people. His methods speak to a proper code of conduct anyone photographing this kind of event should adhere to. They were appreciative to the interest and attention I could give them, and were anxious to tell their stories. I feel in my small way that I was a part of the process of healing. Certainly, I am irrevocably moved and marked by this ongoing tragedy. Going deeper down that compassionate route is Stein's project titled Living with AIDS. Over 3 years in the 1990s, Stein photographed 120 people who had contracted the disease. He asked each of them to provide a written statement of their reaction to the discovery that they had the illness. Through text and image, my aim was to increase understanding and awareness of living with AIDS, and to give a human face to a disease that is all too often described only in demographic and statistical terms. All of these people were from different age groups and social classes. They represented different genders, sexual orientations, and racial backgrounds, as a way to convey that AIDS can impact anyone. There are still so many other projects of Stein's to talk about, but to keep this video somewhat short, I don't want to cover all of them here, but I would urge you to explore them on your own. He is truly inspirational in regard to the amount of work he's created, the thought he puts into each project, and the motivation he can give each of us to create more focused projects on our own. I believe photographs speak to us. They are reminders of the past. To look at a family album is to recall a vanished memory, or to see old friends materialize before our eyes. In making photographs, the photographer is simultaneously a witness to the moment and a recorder of its demise. This is the camera's power. Photography's magic is the ability to touch, inspire, sadden, and to connect to each viewer according to that person's unique sensibility and history. Thanks to Dehancer for sponsoring this video. If you want to know how to use their plugin to get the look of film on your digital photo and video, check the link in the description. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, keep developing.